and this is the next in line, PowerPoint. So for your interest sakes, there are a couple of Copilot workshops that we are repeating or extending that are coming up. So if you haven't already, please go to our website and subscribe to all of our upcoming workshops around Copilot, because it's very interesting, informative. And Aidan, who I'm about to formally introduce to you, is on the line, and he is the gun around all things Copilot, or at least in our eyes. And we're very pleased to have him join us today. He's the manager of Microsoft Alliances for Pax8, and Pax8 is our strategic technology partner for all things Microsoft. So I'd like to warmly welcome Aidan, who's going to be our subject matter expert today, and he's going to take you through some information and demonstrations.
Awesome. No, thanks very much, Sarah. I might just take control of the slides there, and then we can move on through. So thanks very much, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join today's sessions, and great to see some friendly names and faces joining in from previous workshops. So really excited to continue this workshop series through to all things Copilot and PowerPoint. We've done a series of other sessions around Teams, Excel, just general usage of Copilot as well, in addition to a few others. So if you are interested in them, keep an eye out on the on-demand sessions. Also keep an eye out on the sessions that are upcoming. But today it's around PowerPoint. I know it's a great tool that I've used for years and years. Sometimes it's absorbed a lot of my time trying to do quite small tasks, but really celebrate the way that we're now able to utilize Copilot to hopefully be able to get some better outcomes faster and be able to concentrate on what's most important, within PowerPoint, which is really telling the story, presenting the story of what we want to do. So the agenda that I've got for today is really just want to make a benchmark. I know there's probably a few new faces here today. Just take one moment just to talk about the Copilot for Microsoft 365 opportunity, why we're talking about Copilot versus some of the other options out there in the AI space. Then start to get a bit more specific around Copilot and PowerPoint, how to get started with prompting with some pretty robust guidelines that work across all AI engines, really, and then spend most of the time going through some hands-on demos to see how Copilot actually works, and then see what it looks like if you do have a license, how you can start to utilize that day to day as well. Awesome. So we've got so for Copilot for Microsoft 365, why are we talking about the Copilot and Microsoft offerings versus some of the other AI and generative AI offerings that you may be more familiar with, such as ChatGPT? Chances are everyone's had a go with ChatGPT. I think 50% of the worldwide internet users have used ChatGPT or generative AI at this point. But the reason why we're talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot versus some of the others is it does have a pretty unique position in the market, particularly in ANZ, where we do have such a high penetration of Microsoft 365 users and environments. Particularly in that post-COVID period, we know a lot of people moved from their on-premise solutions through to the cloud using Microsoft 365. So this is where it starts to bring together a pretty unique viewpoint on how it can really add value to your business day to day. First of all, just really fundamentally, Microsoft Copilot is using the same, if not better, versions of the large language models that you'd be utilizing day to day through ChatGPT, through Gemini, through Grok, whichever brand of generative AI you're using. Microsoft is using the same large language models, particularly through its partnership with OpenAI there. But what it does do, which some of the other ones don't do, is it works directly with your data where it's already stored if it's in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So chances are we're all on Teams today, so we're all probably in a Microsoft 365 environment one way or another right now. This large language model technology will speak directly into the data that you give it access to. Very important that it does stipulate it is working with the data you give it access to, so it is able to be controlled on making sure that you can interact using your AI tools with the data that you can access at the right time in the right place. So if you don't need to access financial records, we're able to control that experience. If you don't need to access HR records, we can control that experience as well, just to make sure that you are only utilizing, or your workers are only utilizing the tools in the places that they need to. An extension of that, so the large language model being AI, your data in M365, it is then integrated into the Microsoft 365 apps itself. So this native integration into the apps really plays off the muscle memory and the change management that we've all pretty much been working through. As long as I've been a student, as long as I've been in the workforce, I've been using pretty much those apps that you can see down the bottom there. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Teams more recently. So if we're taking this new technology, this new opportunity into the data where it's already protected and it already resides, into apps that you already know how to use, then what I can see is there's a less of a barrier to adopt, less of a barrier to get the return on your investment and make sure you can maximize the opportunity sooner than later, versus needing to export to a third-party area where you don't know how the data is being treated, or using tools that you need to learn from scratch how to do, which obviously brings in a large change management piece there for you as well. So pretty excited as to how we can then maximize that opportunity, but let's dive in a little bit deeper. So for the purposes of today's session, we're really focusing on PowerPoint and the app experience specifically. So where do we start to utilize Copilot and large language models in the experience of PowerPoint? Well, some of the really high-level ways that we'll be displaying this through the demo is through the instant presentation or the instant drafting of presentations there for you. We all know what it's like when we have to either start from scratch or start with a Word document or start with another document and turn that into a presentation. That's obviously the rest of the afternoon gone as you're starting to drag and drop boxes across, copy and paste things, standardized formatting, or worst case scenario, a marketer's nightmare, giving it to someone who doesn't have that marketing lens on there and seeing how that branding and that inconsistency is applied in those presentations, seeing that pop in the boardroom and everyone starts to think, how did this happen? We need to sort of see how we can start to control that experience and get some really good consistency. So instant presentation drafting, we're able to utilize prompting, which I'll talk through in a moment, to really give it a massive head start and get to sort of like that 80% draft position of where you can start to utilize these presentations. Some of the more common use cases you may already use generative AI for, though, is really through the condensation or summarization of content as well. So me being in the Microsoft ecosystem day to day, I'll go through a demo a little bit. We're very, very comfortable with getting an 80-page presentation, needing to digest that as quickly as possible. If we can somehow summarize that information quickly, it's going to make sure that we can A, identify where the value is for ourselves, and B, start to pinpoint that and reduce the size of that presentation to make it a bit more consumable for what we want to do with it next, whether it's re-representation of that or turning that into a different type of document. We're able to utilize those summaries. As I sort of alluded to before, branding consistency is a really strong use case when it comes to Copilot in PowerPoint. So I'll show through some of the demos, how we can start to utilize some of the Microsoft 365 templates to control that look and feel, control the fonts and usage and placements that you usually look for within your brand consistency. It can also be used for your organization's branding guidelines as well. So I'll talk to that a little bit as well, as that's a huge opportunity. If you are investing in your brand quite heavily, you want to make sure that that is consistently represented when you bring it through to market as well. There's a whole bunch of other use cases, but one of the other ones I just wanted to mention is the generation of speaker notes. So we know that some people present just through visualizations and storytelling. Others need a bit more of a richer speaker note presence within their presentations to get up and running. You can actually ask that through Copilot as well, decipher the information within this presentation, create relevant speaker notes that you're then able to adjust from there. Once again, reducing the time that it takes to get from zero to that presentation state, because you're able to work with the draft that's presented for you and to manipulate that from there, versus needing to write these things from scratch or just copy and pasting the content from the slide. So hopefully getting a richer experience for the presenter. But how do we get started? So where we really want to do with all things generative AI, including Copilot, is we want to make sure that we're prompting as efficiently as possible, making sure that the first way that we're interacting with the technology is going to get the output that'll be closest to what we use at the end. Microsoft has some really good guiding principles, which they call their prompt ingredients. So we try and keep these as consistent as possible across all of our Copilot interactions. But really, if we do tick off these columns being what is the goal of what we want to do, what is the context of where it's coming, or what's the context of what we want it to do, why we want to do it, what's the source, where is the data coming from? Can we really pinpoint that more effectively for Copilot to look where we want it to do, not overreach, and what are the expectations for how we want that output to look? We should be able to get an output which is closer to what we can use versus needing to have an ongoing conversation to then refine. This will be some guiding principles that will hopefully get you to the outcome as soon as possible. If we look at the example that we have on the screen, the goal is ultimately we want to have 3 to 5 bullet points is the output that we want from Copilot. Why do we want this? We want it to prepare for a meeting, focusing on a certain client and focusing on a certain brand campaign. So please send it down on those keywords. Copilot will be able to look through the data sources that we lead it to decipher those. If we think about the source, if we don't put a source within our prompt, Copilot will look across your entire M365 estate with all of the information it has access to, starts to bring in a bit more variability in what it's going to bring back in your output. So if we ask it to focus on emails and Teams chat for a specific time period, so since June, that really narrows down the focus. If we think about how much data is likely within our organizations, it really helps make it more specific to that use case. And then finally, please use simple language so I can get up to speed quickly. As much as we love fancy words when we're presenting, we want to make sure that it is a way that we can pronounce them on the day. So making sure that we do put those expectations in there will just really help refine that output for us as well. So we'll try and integrate these into the demos just to make sure that we can see some of the differences here. But I do recommend guiding your prompting with these principles to really help just get more comfortable from scratch and then find your own style when it comes to working with Copilot or other AI. Awesome. I think we might have you on Spotlight there, Sarah. So I'll see if I press the right button. Yeah, that's the case.
You want to get my noggin off? Is that what you're saying?
No, not by any means. It's better than present. Just want to make sure people can see this one. Charlie, if you can just able to confirm that we've got it on the right screen. Otherwise, I'll just power ahead for us as well. So what I'll do is hopefully you can see my screen and you're able to see that I've got a PowerPoint presentation already open for us. Usually I'd start with a blank interface, but what I just wanted to show is just a bit about the interaction or the interface with Copilot, and then just a lot of the use cases where people become most comfortable with generative AI is that summarization that we mentioned earlier. So what we've got here is, as I mentioned before, I've got one of these longer Microsoft presentations. If you're in the Microsoft ecosystem at all, you know that this is probably one of the shorter ones at 33 slides. But Microsoft, as opposed to other experiences, Microsoft overwhelms with some great content, which is a great problem to have, especially when you've got Copilot by your side as well. So if you start to scroll down, this is really just about how small and medium businesses from Microsoft's perspective can get up and running with all things Copilot. So a lot of really good information in here, both about the technology, about the user and behavioral change that they recommend, and how to really get started on some of the principles that I've shared already. If I'm just looking at this, Microsoft released about 15 of these last week, so I want to make sure I get up to date. This is from a little while ago, but I want to just show how within Copilot we're able to summarize these to then, if we want to create our own presentations or want to take this information away in another form, how do we start to extract this quickly? So I've got the presentation open. As with most Copilot experiences, if we start to go to the top right-hand corner, click on the Copilot icon, we'll then start to get warmed up in some of the recommendations of how Copilot will recommend we get started. So you do get some pretty generic, as we haven't put anything specific in yet. So you do have create a presentation about recommending a topic. So benefits of meditating every day, not too relevant for us now. We can start to extract text from images in here, which is a pretty handy tool when it comes to things visual, which historically you'd have to just write that down, which can be a challenge. You can start to add slides if you want to interact with this, but really today I want to summarize this presentation and see what that output looks like. So quick as a flash, we're able to then summarize that presentation. And if I just start to have a bit of a look, it's breaking it down into subheadings for me. So as expected, we have an introduction and overview, implementation and steps and frameworks for Copilot, security and compliance, which is pretty awesome, which we haven't covered off too much today. So if you do want to talk about security and compliance when it comes to Copilot, please do reach out to the KMT team for guidance there. And then around user training and enablement and different topics that also within the Microsoft ecosystem. I won't go into that too much today as we are focusing on PowerPoint itself, but one of the great things that we do have is that it does have reference points in here as well. So if you're kind of like, okay, I'm really wanting to focus on the security compliance aspect of this, I do like the sound of some of these features around different license types, different reasons to enhance your security compliance for Copilot. Let's have a look at the different slides that are available. And I believe if I click on that one, it'll take me directly to that slide as well. So I can go straight to that subject area. If you're working within a slide deck that is about 100 pages long, it'll save you so much time. It saved me time with this one today, just making sure I can break through it, because historically, what would I do is I go to the left-hand side and I just scroll down, I'd squint my eyes and hopefully try and find the right one at the right time. So more accurate and faster utilizing the Copilot experience. That's really what I wanted to show with this one. So now I'll go back to my M365 environment just to see how we can get started more from a blank slate, but I did just want to show a bit about how to utilize the summarization feature. Within the getting started with Copilot, so if we do start from a blank presentation, I'll just open this one up in my M365 browser experience. The reason that I'm using the browser as opposed to the desktop app for the rest of the presentation is generally Microsoft does deploy the newest version of Copilot to the browser ahead of the app experience as well. So just be mindful, if you do see an announcement around a feature that's released, you find that it's not in the app that you're using, try the desktop or try the browser version, and chances are that will be active there. It's usually about a week or two before it's rolled out across the board. Let's go through and create a blank presentation today. So as we can see, pretty standard opening experience. We've got a white file, just black text on top. We do have the options. Copilot does prompt us straight away. We could go up to the top right-hand corner and get started that way, but now they are integrating that feature into the first interface you have, because they really want people to start utilizing Copilot if you are getting the license and getting that value back. What I want to do here just to get started is let's create a new presentation, opening up that text box, and this is where we start to get prompting. So what I want to do first of all is just create a generic presentation from Copilot, let it do most of the talking for us, and then I'll go through a couple of scenarios where we're getting a bit more focused in on an existing document that we want to utilize. So in the spirit, we just came from a Copilot for Microsoft 365 presentation. I'd like Copilot to help me out with a presentation for Microsoft 365 Copilot. So please create a presentation about Microsoft 365 Copilot, focusing on some of the use cases for Word, Teams, and PowerPoint, focused on small to medium business, sorry. I'm trying to speak and type at the same time. Please keep language simple and easy to understand, and use dot points and images where appropriate. Testing out my spelling today as well. So I'll give that just a go. Just want to see where we get started here. So we're not using an existing document. We're letting Copilot do a lot of the heavy lifting here from the information it's able to find on the internet, basically. As there's a wealth of information from Microsoft and other sources on this, we get to start to see how it starts to build this out. So one of the new additions to PowerPoint is it does give you a bit of a visualization as to how this presentation will be built out. So you can start to manipulate this before it actually starts to go through the full generation of the slides. If we think about the use cases we have here, we have an introduction going through some of the things that I've covered off this morning around the benefits, what is Copilot, an overview of supported apps, etc., and then specifically into those subheadings that I've mentioned as well. So if you think about exactly the prompt that I entered in, we've got Word, we've got Teams, we've got PowerPoint, and then the real world benefits to small and medium businesses. So if I think I really want to focus in on my audience, first of all, before getting into those app experiences, I can then go and reorder these topics and start to move it up the chain. You can obviously do this afterwards, but it just means that you are going to be having the experience or the end result that you want sooner than later as well. You can start to manipulate these and say, I don't really need that introduction slide. I can get rid of that as well, for example. If we go through and generate these slides, it'll estimate the number of slides here is around 20, maximum being around 40. So it does kind of give you that indication into how long that presentation will be as well. Let's go through and create that one for us. It shouldn't be too long. Although the generation experience, as we are going from prompting through to visualizations, can take a little bit longer than some of the other apps, which would say Word is just using text, or Teams is generally just using text as well. We do have a little bit more of a generation time. So if you did want to go get a cup of tea, it doesn't take that long, but it's always a good excuse in my book. We can start to go down here. You can start to see a bit more about the generation. I really do like that Copilot gives you that sort of experience where you start to see where it's building and where it's going. And then we can see that presentation has been built out. From a high level, we can see it's got pretty clear title slides, pretty brutal as far as the black background white text. So you can't miss them, but there is a way to start going through and getting that a bit closer to the look and feel you need. Let's keep that, and then we can dive in and take a bit of a closer look. So if we go into here, as we have used this blank template, we've used all the designing really from PowerPoint. So we haven't given it a lot to work with. And so you can start to see if we do look for design suggestions, they're really a remix of the same theme, not a lot of improvisation on the colors and of the text that we're using. So there probably is a bit of work that we can do here. But if we start to go down to these slides, they'll probably be the same. But if we start to look at some of the more structured slides, we are able to then use AI to get design suggestions on a look and feel that we prefer. So if we want to change the location of the images in here, we can go through and tick that. If we want to just change the structure of it completely, just using sort of more of a framed image, we can start to do that one as well. And we can generate more design ideas too. In order to access these design suggestions, it is up in the top right-hand corner next to Copilot as well. So do be mindful, the more information we do give to this, the more templates that we utilize, it does give some jazzier sort of suggestions versus these ones, which are quite straightforward. So let's go ahead and see if we can make something a little bit more close to a real use example in order to make sure that you can start to see how we can utilize templates, how we can create that sort of more branded look and feel from the start. So I'm not too sure if we have, are there any, just while I'm doing that, I might just break for a second just to see if there's any questions, and I'll just move across to the next demo.
Yeah, we had a comment actually in there about how the folks that are on the workshop are seeing the screen. So apparently it was splitting your face as a spotlight with the PowerPoint demonstration. So we've just made an adjustment at our end. So hopefully now it's showing better. Sanjita popped that into the chat. So if you can give me a thumbs up, or someone can give me a thumbs up that we fixed it, then that would be helpful. And I might be getting a new question just coming in too. So if anyone can tell me that you're able to see the screen well, that will be good. Yes, it's fixed it, so that's
Awesome.
helpful. Great. And
Okay.
then there is a question I think that's come in, so just bear with me, Aidan. How do you apply your company's branding to the slides? I think you might be covering that
Yes.
coming
Yes,
up.
so
Yes, so
Yeah,
yeah.
so I'll just do
Great.
that one now. So to kind of give a bit of a context of what I'm going to do now, I thought we're in the sort of mid to late July. We're in the middle of tax time. So I had a look around on the internet and I found some government advice on some of the taxes do and don'ts, which I thought may be a good presentation to have if you are running a internal team meeting that you do want to get branded up, in the spirit that I want to show how Copilot can utilize existing documentation to build out a presentation. So one of the use cases I wanted to use was a PDF file. Historically, very challenging to get these files into a presentation format, even into a Word format, really. So how do we go through this using this government advice? If you work in sales and marketing, let's do some learning on what you can claim, what you can't claim, and some information around that. To more directly go to Ivana and Lucy's questions, if we do want to get started with creating a branded presentation, I'll go through and I'll show that now. If I go back to PowerPoint, I click on File, click on New, and I don't want to start with a blank presentation now. What I want to do is start from a template. I want to browse from templates here. I won't be able to go directly into how to utilize Pax8's internal branding. We're actually going through the process of optimizing our presentation template so it works with Copilot. I'll show you a little bit about what I mean. So you can see here, we've got two options when it comes to templates. We've got Microsoft 365, which are the Microsoft 365 generated templates, which everyone has access to as part of their licensing. I've got a second option here for Pax8. So I do have a Pax8 branded templates here. You can start to see just the small image there of the little fonts and colors which are within there. Unfortunately for this is the corporate template that has been uploaded, not a Copilot optimized one. And what I mean by that is this, it's actually about 80 to 90 pages long, so pretty good for my summarization example from earlier. However, there's way too much information in there for Copilot to choose the right font, to choose the right look and feel. There's ways of example graphs, example pie charts, stuff like that in there. So it isn't going to give Copilot really clear guidance on what branding to use, of what fonts to use, what placements to use. The recommendations from Microsoft is you are able to upload this into your company directory, into your environment, so everyone's got access to it, but it would be only generating a template of around 5 to 6 slides with example subheadings, headings, title pages, and those sort of things. So you can utilize this. I'll try and visualize it as best as I can with one of the Microsoft templates to see how that experience changes. But if you are looking to utilize company branding, A, yes, you are able to do it, and B, just try and make sure it's only 5 to 6 slides long with some really clear guiding on how you want that to work. So really consistent title pages, consistent placement of subheadings, and only probably 3 or 4 different font types would be my recommendation as well. If we go into the Microsoft 365 templates, for example, though, I do like using this sort of minimalist sales pitch one that I've used maybe a couple of times if you're on an earlier demo. So what I go is I'll go in and click Create on this one, and we'll start to have a look at what the template starts to look like, what we'll be starting to work with. I quite like this this format. It's pretty clear title pages. If you take guidance, probably good looking at these templates to see how you mold your company branding one if you are uploading it into M365 as well for Copilot. You can start to see we've got our title slides, we've got an about us, we've got a few different ways of breaking down images. We've got that sort of black background, the tan background, and different ways of mapping out dot points and things like this. So a lot of information for Copilot to work with in order to get started and create a presentation. What I want to do is I want to utilize this template and I want to work with that tax time document that I had earlier. So if I go through and click on Copilot, whilst keeping this template open, I want to create a new presentation. So create a presentation using this document. Then I just put a / to choose the right document. If I can find this, the tax time toolkit is what I was after there. So if I go create a presentation using this document, tax time toolkit PDF that I was working with at the moment, what I'll do is I'll just do a sort of simplified prompt at this stage, and then I'll see if we can do a better prompt afterwards to see how we change this one up. But I just want to create a presentation using this document, adding images where appropriate. So what I do is I'll submit this request. Hopefully I should get a request back saying, do you approve overriding these slides? So I'll just give it a few moments. Hopefully that goes through.
Like you know what you're doing. It's like you've been here before.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you try and rehearsal, and then sometimes you get surprises on the day. But it looks like we've got create a new presentation there. This has a little bit of a changed experience. So I did see this before. It does pop up with this new text box to go through that new sort of storyboarding experience. So I'll just have to put my prompt through once again. So create a presentation about next time, toolkit, sales and marketing. But the good thing is that Copilot won't go through and override any slides without permissions. So that's the good reason that it does have that sense check there. But I think it's probably just a bit about the user experience where they'll adjust that sort of double handling that we just went through here. As per what we saw before, we can see that it's starting to go through that PDF. If you sort of recall what was on there, general rules for claiming work-related deductions, car expenses, travel expenses for work. Bearing in mind, this was for sales and marketing stuff, so this is probably the most relevant for here. There are a few different one-pages for different industries. If you were interested in doing this demo at home, estimated number of slides, 23. Let's go through and generate this presentation. I'll just go through while that's there to see if there are any questions. Awesome.
Well, there is.
There's a comment.
Yeah, there's one new question that's just popped in. I was going to choose a good time, but it is a good time given the thinking going on from Copilot. This is from Blake. When you created that presentation earlier focusing on Microsoft 365 Copilot and you asked it to grab the information from the internet, is there a section which highlights where it got its source? So if you wanted to find the source of the information, were you able to press on a link perhaps or link back to where the information was being collected from?
Yes, I'll jump back there in one moment. So I'll just make sure that this loads up because sometimes I don't want to confuse Copilot by putting too much compute into the one spot. So I'll go through and I'll just keep this slide deck. I'll go through to see if we've got that original presentation there for us. Go back to the Copilot experience. There should be sources at the bottom of that prompt. So I may have deleted those. What we can do, Blake, I'll see if I can get that for us. Actually, I was in the full browser, wasn't it? One moment. Yes, so just to answer your question there, Blake, so we had the summary here using this one. All of the references are down here as the slides for it. I don't see the references here for all of the sources for this Copilot for Microsoft 365. I might need to take that one away. So I will take that away. Now, in the meantime, I'll go back to the other presentation. So sorry for the mix up there. If I go through and open up these slides, however, a few moments, we can start to see that if we compare the first experience that we had with that Microsoft 365 presentation, just really the white background, black text, and then some stock imagery where the Copilot deemed appropriate. If we go through, so I'll just need to move this little text plotter. If we go back to the one where we've utilized that Copilot or that Microsoft 365 template, we can see the look and feel is pretty dramatically different from here as well. So this would be similar to the experience if you have uploaded that sort of 5 to 6 page template into your M365 environment, but that is the necessary step in order to utilize company branding versus just opening up a company branded template and then adding on top of that, even though I do believe that is in the Microsoft roadmap to make that experience a bit more easy. So if we look out here, we've got our tax time deductions, we've got our title page as well, so general rules around this. Then we start to get into the sort of subheading pages of general rules and claiming for this sort of stuff. What we can do here is we can say, okay, this is it's a good slide. Some of the fonts are a little bit too small. This is where we start to utilize that Copilot experience and then overlay it with the designer experience to get a little bit closer to what we want to work with the first time. So in which case, we can start to scroll down some of the different options that Copilot has available. We can make that image a little bit smaller to give a little bit more room for the text. We may need to go through and make some manual changes just to increase the size of it. But as far as we think about the time it's taken, time it's put back into our day, summarizing that PDF, really creating some subheadings as well. It does get us to that first draft stage a lot faster than we did otherwise. If we think about some of the methods, it's obviously a government website recommending the My Deductions tool. I won't go through all of these, but they are pretty clear out. We could probably summarize and reduce down some of the slides. It is about 26 pages long. We may want to have it a bit more reduced than that. That is one of the things where I'm finding that there probably is some improvements to, say, make a 5-page presentation and get 5 pages every time. Copilot does like to extend out the information and create really simple slides with only 2 to 3 dot points as well, especially if you put that into the prompt. So this is where you start to have a look around. But if we think about some of the fonts that we're able to use, some of the colors that we've used, it is a bit more of an appealing presentation from the start versus just utilizing that white background and black text with some of the stock imagery that we would then need to copy and paste across. Some of the title pages as well is they'll put these through here. Obviously, it's pretty stark, but it does include areas for us to include stock images from the M365 libraries. So if we look at an image that we want to do, general rules for claiming work-related deductions, pretty accounting sort of based, finance-based topic. We just click on that little magnifying glass. It then brings us into an area where we can start to utilize Microsoft stock imagery. Like the look of this little spreadsheet or graphs, insert that one there. We'll have this available in, and it will start to utilize the formatting from the document and then use some different suggestions for the design if we don't like the look of that one and want to use something else as well.
Oh, wow, that's neat.
Yeah, so through like the 1-2 punch of Copilot plus Designer, it can really save some of the time that it comes to look at with some pretty professional sort of corporate looking presentations, which is great. What I might do is I might try and just put in a bit more of a rich prompt as well, because we did just basically just say, please create a presentation utilizing this PDF and let Copilot do most of the talking for us. So I might just start this one again. I think this was so that was the pitch benefits. I know that we might have to put this prompt in again, so I will just make sure that I write it down first. Let's go through, and I will use a prompt that I wrote in earlier, so hopefully I'll be able to paste it through pretty easily, but I'll walk through some of the ingredients that I've used for this one. So what I want to do is create a professional presentation on the tax deduction document, and this is where I'll just need to add that document in. What I say is a professional presentation on the tax time document for my company to present to staff. So just a bit of context around the audience that I'll be speaking to. Include a disclaimer slide, and this is advice to ensure that this is advice that they'll need to verify with your accountant or tax professional, and please ensure the language is simple and clear in dot point format. Please include relevant images and speaker notes where appropriate. So that's one of the things we want to check out if you are presenting this. I'll just copy that one in case I do need to re-put it through in the next stage as we did previously, but hopefully we'll be able to build this one out and get that permission to write on top of these slides and get started. Awesome. Create new presentation once again. As guest, to put that through again, I'll just go through and just put in that prompt once again. And just to clarify, so the things we're looking out for is a disclaimer slide. We also want to make sure that there is dot points and that it's clearly structured with images as we saw before, but also speaker notes where appropriate too. Let's go through and create that one. So as this one builds out, this was actually it is a pretty straight down the line demo from PowerPoint today, just wanting to make sure you can see how not only you can utilize the large language model to generate information, how you can start to utilize that with templates as well, but then also how we can start to get some more information in there with those richer prompts and those guidelines as well. So if we start to look at the requests that I put through, I do have a disclaimer slides that have come through. We've got our similar claims that we have here also. And then we want to make sure we generate these new slides, and then we can see if there are those speaker notes that we asked for as well. Once this is presented, I'll show that there are a few ways to manipulate the presentation once it's been built out. It isn't just a 0 to 100 approach as we've sort of seen so far. But whilst that's generating, and we'll start to go through those, please put through any questions that we have as well, because I want to make sure if there is anything that I can clarify today, or we can
There's a quick one for you. There's a quick one from... So Anna is asking, are you saying that you cannot direct Copilot to only use, say, 5 slides? Can you not ask it to shrink it down to a finite number of smaller amount of slides?
That's what I was trying to test that one out over the past couple of days, and it didn't seem to be a strength right now. But these are improving all the time. So I have actually seen through using Copilot over the past 18 months, it has gone through sort of making worse slides, but being guided a bit more by those principles. Now it's starting to create a bit more of a longer form form presentation, but it hadn't been adhering to those slides. So there is a bit of a sort of trial and error that I've been working through with this one. Unfortunately, it wasn't working too correctly for me in the lead up to today's session, but I know it is on the roadmap to get amended because it's definitely some of the feedback that's been passed through to always be improving. It's one of the things about the Copilot for Microsoft 365 as well. It's such a large solution that the roadmap is ridiculously long and they do update it all the time, which is why I sort of gave that disclaimer at the start of if some of the experiences aren't working through the app, please try in the browser experience because we want to make sure that we do get the best or latest version of that one for you as well.
And as you said, they're constantly updating them too. So what might be the current offering today changes, and if you come back 3 months later, it might be able to do quite a bit more. And I'm finding that across a lot of the apps myself. Aidan, one other question. Someone is saying that they have, I'm assuming you have the Copilot license, but they're not able to see the Copilot icon in PowerPoint. Why might that be the case for this particular individual? So, and I'll just kind of qualify that by saying we would assume that you have got the Copilot license attached to your Microsoft licensing, but if you do and you're not seeing the Copilot symbol there, why might that be the case?
So for that one, yeah, so assuming that you do have Copilot for Microsoft 365, there is the free version of Copilot, which is just basically using the ChatGPT type experience with the web. So assuming that you've got, sorry, I just have to generate that one again. Assuming that you do have the Copilot for Microsoft 365 paid license, if that isn't showing in your applications, you may just need to speak to your IT provider or IT team to make sure that that is switched on. There's probably a pretty logical answer as to why that wouldn't be taking place, as it is more of a box tick in order to make that happen. But there shouldn't be too many blockers when it does come to this. No, sorry, I did just need to refresh that request. Probably a few people putting through Copilot requests at the same time. Generally, it is pretty fast, but I think as we are using that enriched prompt, it is just slowing down. And the showbiz of live demos.
Yeah. So just keep trying is what you're suggesting there. If it doesn't work the first time, try and try again.
And there's also bandwidth of running a webinar at the same time as doing this as well. Looks like it's working this time. I'll go through and open that presentation. There hasn't been too many times that it hasn't worked on the second attempt for me, but my NBN may be struggling a little bit with all of the things that I'm pushing through at the same time. But happy days, we got there on the second try. So let me go through. Let's double check some of the changes that I requested versus that original output that we had. So once again, the title slide is there. See if we can bring this up.
Ah, yes.
And then we can start to see some of these speaker notes. So hopefully it does exactly what it says on the tin. Hopefully it doesn't get too creative with the licensing here, but it does give us some ways to get started to make sure that you can speak about these slides. Let's go to a richer slide to see what the speaker notes are there. Let's go to the disclaimer ones as well, because these were the ones that we did get from the toolkit, but also starts to probably utilize some of its research in order to put these together. So if we're using the disclaimer slide, this presentation provides general advice only. Always confirm details with a registered tax professional. For more information, visit the ATO or a tax expert. That's pretty good speaker notes for what I would probably want to deliver on that slide deck, just to really set the scene. Let's go down a little bit more. This is general summary only. So this is where we started to utilize probably the slide a bit more effectively. Probably pretty straightforward here. I didn't ask for too many pieces of information. If we go to general rules around claiming work-related expenses, this is when we start to get a bit more of the information of what's coming up in the slides, so you can start to speak to and set the scene with this one as here. We did only put speaker notes in where appropriate. If you think about the PDF that we're using from this as well, it's really only that 2-page PDF that we're asking it to source the information from as well. So we could probably start to use, say, one of those larger long-form Microsoft documents to get speaker notes, because there's a lot of information in those slides. Also a lot of links that it can refer to as well. We can see that some of the information does have a bit of a clunky sort of setup in the speaker notes. So we could go through, so we could go through and fix that up. However, we can see that we do have some speaker notes to work with, and it is telling us where we are getting that information from as well. It's also giving us the information of where the source image is from. So if we're getting it from elsewhere, it would let us know. But we are starting to get some of those speaker notes, even though, as we sort of said at the start, extracting text and information from PDFs can be challenging at the best of times. So I think that's probably some of the spacing issues that we're running into there, versus if it was a Word document, or versus if it was a more Microsoft ecosystem friendly doc as well. But that's part of the learning. So
we have another question or comment, or so from Bennett, just wanting to know, is there a way to hide the speaker notes? And I think I know the answer to this one, but I'm not going to push myself ahead of you, Aidan. I'm going to let you answer that one. Is there a way to hide the speaker notes from the audience?
From the audience, well, that would be when we go into presentation mode in general. So that's the purpose of running presentation modes within PowerPoint. Generally, if I'm doing a presentation, I would have two screens. So I'd have the slides that everyone would see, and then I'd have the speaker notes and the presentation mode that I'd refer to on another screen. I'll press on at a risk of
teaching these people all of our webinar secrets, because I have the same thing going on. I've got my speaker notes, which I have on to my right, and then I've got your presentation up in front of me on the webinar.
Yeah, so rather than being a sort of Copilot related one, more of a just utilizing PowerPoint, if you click on the Start Slideshow button, this should bring up the full screen. So this is what everyone else should see. Since I'm using the browser, I may not be able to see it correctly for me. Let's see if I can change the mode here. Okay, might just exit out there. But what that would do is, so if you created the presentation mode, I would probably do this in the app versus in the browser experience. Putting into presentation mode will be, that's what everyone will be able to see. They won't be able to see the speaker notes, but you will be able to have a presentation mode on another slide or on a feedback monitor if you're presenting on stage to be able to see that you can see what the slides are, see what the next slide is, and then see what the text is as well. So as you can see, I didn't even check this, but they do have Copilot also added in the animations. So we can start to see that it started to break down. We only started with the first slide, and then we have these little transitions that it's automatically put in there as well. So just helping with the professionalism of the slide deck, which is great. Awesome. Yeah, unless there are any questions, that was really kind of just what I wanted to show. So just covering off what we've sort of walked through. At the start, we saw how Copilot in PowerPoint is able to summarize long form presentations, utilize the information within those presentations to kind of lead you around where the subheadings are or where the relevant information is. If not, just giving you a summary that you can then export and utilize as you wish. But then we can start to see how you can start to work with a blank presentation, so that white background with black text on top, but you can start to integrate templates, whether it's your company or the Microsoft 365 templates on top of that, utilizing either information that it extracts from the web or utilizing internal documents and assets that you've got, Word files, PDF files, different sort of formats that you can integrate to help create those presentations from scratch and really start to get the ball rolling. So hopefully a few tips and tricks to get started with here. But as we mentioned, Copilot is changing all the time. So we are seeing a lot of change. We saw that new storyboard function to be able to manipulate the presentation before it's even generated. That's only come out in the past couple of months, and there's a lot of updates coming through the channel as well. So really excited to see where it's going, but hopefully you should be able to save you a good amount of time in the meantime.
Right. Thank you so much, Aidan. Very, very informative. And for someone that doesn't play in PowerPoint too much, it's probably because of my fear of doing so. So this has been really helpful for people like me even to understand how I could just pop in there and do something that's quite comprehensive or even simple. I just wanted to thank you for joining us today. And obviously this has been one part of our whole Copilot AI and Microsoft 365 productivity series. So we are constantly dreaming up new content for you, but we do want you to inform us of what you would like to be learning about. So, but at the same time, if you have missed any of the previous sessions, you can pop onto our website, or there is a QR code here that will direct you there for any on-demand recordings from our previous workshops. So that can be really helpful if you've just joined the Copilot bandwagon and you want to catch up on all of the tasty options that we've had previously around Outlook and Teams, and we've done Excel, haven't we? We're sort of moving our way through all of those topics. And we have a productivity center there that not only has those on-demand sessions, but it also has got some cheat sheets for you. So some prompting sheets that will help you work through those applications in Copilot. We're using Copilot as best you can to get the most out of it.